Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Better Business Writing Workshop, How to Write to Get Your Startup Noticed. I'm Michael McGuire, ProWritingAid's B2B Digital Marketing Manager, and today I am joined by our guest host, Lindy Ledohowski, VP at EdTech Startup Wize. Lindy really has a fantastic session prepared for you guys today, and it is truly way more than just theory. Because yes, while Lindy does hold a PhD in English, the startup she co-founded, EssayJack, was just successfully acquired by Wize last year. So this is truly been there, done that advice on the power of great writing for startups. So without further ado, Lindy, I'll go ahead and let you take it over.
Okay, thanks so very much for that intro, Micah, and welcome everybody. We will definitely be talking about some different writing genres that you need to know to get your startup noticed. And so without further ado, what I'll do is I will share my screen so that you can see what I am seeing, and we will then kick things off. So hopefully you are now seeing what I'm seeing. If you have questions along the way, please put them in the chat, and then I'm going to count on Micah to jump in and interrupt me if there's something that we want to talk about. And then as well, periodically throughout, I'll sort of stop and be like, hey, do we need any clarification on that? Do we want to revisit anything that we talk about? So my intention is for this to be helpful and useful for you, those of you who are here live and those who might be watching this afterwards, and to give you some really practical resources for writing. You've got my contact information and where to get in touch with me. You've had the little bio about me. So yes, I do know a number of things from a specific and theoretical writing perspective. I was an English professor and then co-founded an academic writing startup, which just shy of 6 years in was acquired by Wize. And part of that acquisition had me join the Wize leadership team. And Wize itself is still characterized as a startup as well. So my last and present professional identity is definitely within the startup realm. And so I have engaged in a number of different writing tasks within the startup realm. And so today we're going to talk about, as is promised in all of the documentation that lured you here, is how to write to get your startup noticed. And now there are a couple of different kinds of startups, of course. What we're going to talk about are a number of them, and I'll try to give you some broad templates and tactical skills that you can take forward. But typically when we think of startup land, we're thinking of tech startups and the tech startups that are seeking venture capital funding. And so often that's kind of what we think about in startups, but of course that's not the only kind of startup there may be. There are also startups which are lifestyle business, and that's characterized by something that doesn't have the intention of becoming $100 million business at the point of exit, which is going to give one of those 100 times returns on the investment, which is kind of what institutional investors are looking for. A lifestyle business is a kind of business that you might start and you might run and you might manage your margins and then be able to have profits at the end of the year, which you either pay out in dividends or that you reinvest back in the business and it runs. There are service companies, and again, there are different ways in which we can construct the offering of services, which is different from technical startups where you're looking for that maximum scale on the back of a technical product. There are, of course, solopreneur businesses, and that's when we give our own skills, and it's only us. So we may not have a payroll, we may not have employees. It may be just us either making a product or selling our service. And then, as I mentioned, there's the sort of venture capital backed tech companies. There's small and medium sized enterprises. So all of these can fall under the umbrella of startups. As I say, in this presentation, we'll be leaning a little bit towards the kind of genres that you see in the venture cap backed tech company startup land. But the 5 key pieces of writing that we're going to talk about do apply to most businesses. And so I'll give you the skills and tools to take them forward and adapt them in your context specifically. So again, as a broad kind of brush stroke, what we're looking at and the aim and objective is that there are a number of different reasons as to why we write, why we want to write so that our startup can be noticed. And one and most important is, of course, that we want our startups, we want our businesses to be noticed by our potential customers, our leads. So we want to make sure that we are writing in a way that people who may be ultimate consumers of our products or services are going to sit up and take notice. We may, in a technical context, we may want to expand and grow our user base. And again, if we're a solopreneur, some solopreneurs are like Instagram influencers, and so they may want to grow their user base, grow their reach. And so it's not necessarily about customers or leads per se, but about eyeballs and about reach and impressions. We may want to write for our startups so that we can get earned media and press coverage. And again, one of the things that is common to all startups is that they are, well, starting up. And so as a startup, often we're wanting to gain attention for our businesses. And one way to do that is, of course, to get some earned media and press coverage. So not paying for a PR firm, but actually doing something sort of interesting enough that that earned media comes to you and you're able to tell your story to a wider audience. Another piece that is very common in terms of writing in your startup is so that you, as the startup founder or co-founder or executive or lead, can also build up your own profile as a trusted thought leader in the industry. So in my industry, for instance, it's ed tech. I want to ensure that when I'm writing in LinkedIn and other online spaces, that I am ensuring that people can take me seriously as a trusted thought leader in the field. And so that's, again, something if you're selling shoes or clothes or food or whatever your niche may be, you want to be able to write in such a way that people go like, oh yeah, I would get shoes from her. I believe that she knows what she's talking about. And then, of course, number 5 is the gaining venture-backed capital for growth. And so there's a whole realm of going through angel investment and seed investment and all the way up through the various series investment rounds that you might be interested in if your startup is a tech startup that's playing in that space. And so we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So before you begin writing for your startup, you need to know where you want to write and who is your audience. So as I mentioned, for instance, writing on LinkedIn, if your audience, the people you want to reach, whoever they might be, aren't on LinkedIn, then you don't want to write on LinkedIn. If your audience, however, is absolutely in some other spaces, there's a trade magazine that is the trade magazine in your industry, then that's where you want to be able to be writing. And only you can answer that question. So I can't tell you in your industry where people are. That's the sort of domain expertise that you bring to your business. So step number 1 is, of course, research. Where are the people that you want to reach? So if those people are your customers, where are your customers? If those people are your partners, your audience, investment, where are they and where can you find them, whether that's through writing online or writing in a print medium. So that's the piece that as we move into looking at some of these concrete examples, I'll have you give a think, so how you would apply some of the lessons, some of the insights, some of the ideas that I will raise. How would you apply it in your own business? And so I need you to be thinking about that because I can't do that piece for you. So some of the pieces of writing that we'll go through in the next section, and I'll give you a moment to ask any questions before we jump into the next section after this kind of context setting beginning. Once we start looking at some templates and some concrete examples, we'll be looking at the elevator pitch, your cold email to investors, but this also works for potential partners, leads, anybody else that basically you are emailing because you want something from them. It can also be if you want earned media or something like that. It's a really sort of great standard email template. Some LinkedIn thought leadership posts. Again, I've framed it in terms of LinkedIn, but you can expand the way that you think about your own thought leadership to other avenues as well. Then I've got a general kind of posting framework and schema for you. It can work for ads if you get into the paid ad space, or simple social posts. And again, that depends on where you're trying to reach your users and what your aim and objective is. And then, of course, the one that we'll end off with, because it's a little bit longer, is having an SEO optimized blog post. And we'll talk through some of the contexts associated with that. So before jumping into the meat of these 5 pieces of writing that are going to be really important to get your startup and your business noticed, I want to pause here and see if there are any questions. Micah, anything from the chat that I need to answer?
No, I think we're good.
All right, perfect. Hearing nothing, I will trundle forward and we will move on to the actual examples that we have. And so for this piece, and hopefully you're still seeing my screen, so I've shared with Micah this template or this document, which all of you will have. Now, what you need to do first is you need to go in and make a copy so that you then have your own editable version of it. Because for this basic one, you will have access to see what I type, but you won't be able to edit it. And of course, the reason you won't be able to edit it is because you go in and edit it and change it. Everybody else who's sharing it will see your changes about your business as opposed to the template. So go ahead and make a copy. And that way, as we go through, if you want, you can start to fill in the details on your own document for your own business. Otherwise, you can just sort of save that for later and then start to fill that in for your own business as we go along. And what we'll do is kind of walk through this in the context of Wize, the ed tech business that I'm currently representing. And I'll give you some examples so that it's real life examples. And again, all of the things that we're going to go through are, lessons learned from the trenches. Here, I'll make this a little bit bigger. Lessons learned from the trenches. So, when you do a PhD in English, nobody teaches you about writing for your startup. So these are things that are hard-earned, tested, and tried out strategies and tactics. So the first one is this elevator pitch. And so, and this is described in a variety of different ways. So again, it comes from this idea that you should be able to describe your business in the amount of time it takes to ride in an elevator with somebody is sort of where it gets its name. But what this means is that this is the shortest and briefest description that you can give about your business that's going to have the key bits of information that a listener will want or that a reader will want. And this is, there are certain set expectations that people want to know when they learn about your business. And so being able to write in such a way that you give people what they're looking for is going to be really important for you to be successful with your own startup. And whether this is an elevator pitch because you are literally in an elevator with somebody who's going to be an investor, or you want to have the confidence to be able to talk about your business in a sort of systematic and standardized way. I think now people say it's no longer called the elevator pitch, it's like the Uber ride or something like that. But the idea is that it's short and that you don't have that person's attention for very long. Another reason that I think it's important to have a kind of Uber pitch or elevator pitch is that it's also something short that if you grow your business, so if it's not a solopreneurship, if it's something where you may have other partners or employees at some point, the more everybody has the kind of one phrase, one sort of set idea of ideas about what your business is and what it stands for, the better it is for everybody. So the key component that you want for your elevator pitch is being clear and concise about the value proposition. So what is the value that your business brings? So this is not like a product-centered my business is shoes and shoes are great. This is what is the value proposition of your particular shoe business, for instance. And it should be 2, maybe 3, but basically 2 sentences with the following structure. So sentence 1, what is the relevance of your offering? So this is where you identify your industry, your niche, and the solution. So you'd say for whoever your target customer is. So for new moms who need to get around with slip-on shoes, our solution, Shoes for Us, allow you to dress while carrying a newborn or whatever, put shoes on while carrying a newborn. So that's sort of the how you would frame your business, the relevance. So who is it for? What do they need to do? What is the name of your company? And it allows you to do what? And then you want to show how what you do is different from anybody else. So this is where you identify your solution's differentiation from other businesses in the field. So unlike, Nike, we at Shoes for Us achieve this slip-on benefit by however it is that your shoes are so amazing. And so I've given this template that you can use. You can write on it in the version of this document that you've saved. And I filled it out with some of the actual language that I would use if I were describing why. So, for students in high stress, high stakes gateway STEM courses who need help to pass exams and classes, Wize is a solution that allows them to get efficiently and on their own time to get better grades. Instead of finding expensive tutors or using homework help cheating sites, we at Wize offer a subscription service to over 18,000 specific course materials with over 3,000 hours of custom video lessons to help students, which has allowed 98% of Wize's over 150,000 student users to improve their grades. So again, that just walks through the who is it for, what is the solution, what is the differentiator, and then if you have any proof. So again, you've got this as a workable, actionable template that you can go away and do what you want with it. Before moving on to the cold email, I want to stop here on this kind of 2-sentence elevator pitch and see if there are any questions on this and how you can work with this template going forward. Nope, no questions. We got it. All right, so you've got this. It's yours. Do with it what you will. Now it's the cold email to investors or potential partners or leads. And so again, this is, I sort of said it's the cold email, but generally speaking, what I'm trying to express is that this is the idea where you're emailing somebody you don't really know. So even though somebody may have introduced you or whatever, you don't have a really close relationship with them, but you are asking them for something. So you're either asking them to invest in you, or you're asking them to be a partner, or whatever it is that you're asking of this person who you don't really know, but who you have as a contact. And so you want, again, a simple structure. And just as the key takeaway for the elevator pitch is that you wanted to express your value proposition, here as well, you want to give them only the core information that they need. So one risk often, especially in these cold emails when you send out, is that we as the startup founders and representatives, often we have so much information and we want to send PDFs and we want to send graphs and we want to send documents. But it's really that first kind of, I want to get your interest is really just the core information that reader is going to need. And so a simple structure that you can use is your subject line is going to be short with any social proof that you have. And so social proof for traction is just going to be numbers. And that's essentially to get somebody to open the email. So that's going to be really important. Then you want a personal opener of some sort. So if you're going to email me, you might say like, I attended your ProWritingAid webinar on writing for startups, and I thought it was really helpful. Something like that. So then you've done your research so that this person who you may not know, you've demonstrated that you know who they are. Then for the brief pitch, you want to say, again, no more than 3 sentences on your startup. This is where you can use your elevator pitch. You can put in those 2 sentences. If there's anything else that you want to add, you can draw it in at that point. And then again, this sort of social proof, or traction. And this should be tied conceptually to what's coming next. So if ultimately the call to action or the ask is going to be that you want to partner with somebody, you want to say, we've partnered with 5 organizations across the country. And then when you get to and we'd love to partner with you, it ties to it. Whereas if you say, so if your social proof is like, we are a revenue positive business and we'd love to partner with you, even though it's great that you're a revenue positive business, you want that ask to be tied to your social proof to a certain extent. And then again, be really clear in that final call to action closing. What is it that you want? If you want them to email you back, if you want them to book a call, if you want them to like hit yes on something, whatever it is, make it be really clear and really easy. So this is where, you've got an automatic calendar link that you can share with them. If there's something where it's really just sort of the click of a button or something very simple that you want of them, that's great. Because and why I'm sort of stressing this is because if it's like, hey, if you want to learn more, let me know, then you're going to have people in this sort of ongoing difficult coordination where you may not necessarily get the best out of them. Whereas if you said, if you want to hear more, click here and schedule time with me, then they can click there and schedule time with you. And then you kind of move the conversation on. So the more you can reduce friction at that last part, the better it is. Before we move on to LinkedIn, any questions on this cold emailing genre? All right. Again, you have this template, which you can edit to your heart's content. I've filled in some sample text, again, sort of using Wize. Some of it is made up, so I sort of pretended this was an investment. And for the social proof, we're opening our 5 million investment round and have already half committed. I mean, my CEO would probably shout at me because that's not actually true. I've just made that up right now. I'm not entirely sure what our next investment round would be, but that's the kind of thing that you want to give in terms of that information. So again, for yourself, this is where, as I say, the first step is the research. So know your own industry, know the people you're reaching out to, know what these details will be, and then you've got this as a kind of template that you can edit for yourself. And now,
Lindy, we did have one question pop up
Sure.
surrounding subject lines for
Yeah.
great cold emails. So
Yes.
any advice there?
So the subject line. So you want the short name of your industry and offer some evidence of traction. So the example that I have here is, EdTech startup with 3 times year-over-year growth. And that was a real subject line that I used. So before EssayJack was acquired, the way that the process with EssayJack, we were just starting our first investment raise. And so I was doing all of these cold emails to investors. And it was from that actually the conversation moved from investment to then acquisition with Wize, and we decided to join forces. But as I was going through the investment phase of things, that was exactly it. So the name of the industry, EdTech startup, with 3 times year-over-year growth. And so then somebody would just be like, okay, well, I invest in EdTech is hot. And then there's evidence of traction or evidence of growth. So the 3 times year-over-year growth or whatever it might be. So if you say like, EdTech company seeking investment, or EdTech company with, 1,000% growth, or EdTech company on the back of first investment raise seeking next round, whatever those kind of specific details, so that if I am the person on the other end and I'm scrolling through my 1,000,001 emails that I get every day, as many of us do, I'll want there to be no guessing about what is going to be in that email based on the subject. So as I say, the 2 key things are the name of the industry, not even necessarily the name of your startup, but if you can fit it in there, great, but the name of the industry and some kind of social proof or traction. All right, on to LinkedIn. And so for LinkedIn, it's quite funny. And again, as I mentioned, with EssayJack, which was then acquired by Wize, how that actually happened emerged in a serendipitous way through LinkedIn posts. So as I was beginning our EssayJack external investment raise, I was posting things about it on LinkedIn. And it so happened that the CEO of Wize at some point just connected with me via LinkedIn. It was like, hey, I really like your posts. I'm in EdTech, you're in EdTech, we should talk. And I was like, okay. And then it was through that when a couple of other companies started to talk about acquisition as opposed to investment with us, that I then reached out to this Wize CEO and said, hey, some companies are talking about acquisition. Like, can we just have a chat? Because I was thinking about investment and I wasn't thinking about acquisition, and I'm not sure how to go about it. And he said, yeah, if you're open to this, don't say yes to anybody else until we chat. And so that's sort of a funny way, and it's kind of like a plug for LinkedIn, which I don't mean it to be a plug for LinkedIn, but typically LinkedIn is a place that, as a business owner, if you're wanting to build up your thought leadership, this is like an easy and free place to do it. Like, I still don't have the premium LinkedIn membership. All of that happened through the free tier. And one of the reasons I think that LinkedIn can be helpful is that people like connecting with people. It's a very successful brand where we feel really invested in the brand itself. A successful brand like ProWritingAid, I'm like, yes, I am invested in that brand. But most often it's the people who make up the brand. And so a way to personalize the brand, to personalize your startup is often through using these LinkedIn thought leadership posts. And the two things that LinkedIn's algorithms really look for are relevancy and engagement. So relevancy is this idea that, it needs to be timely, and engagement is that you're asking people of something, so that you're trying to drive people to click on something or to ask questions or to comment or in some way engage with your content. And that's because, like, LinkedIn itself has its own agenda, and its agenda is, again, to promote usage of its platform. So there's all of this at play behind the scenes. And so there's a simple structure of a LinkedIn thought leadership post. And again, it depends on your industry, and it depends how comfortable you are positioning yourself as a thought leader. But there are a couple of ways that you can do this. So you can have an opening where you ask a question or you post a bold statement. So something about your industry that is provocative. Then you can provide a brief explanation of, so if you're saying, should all students have tutors? And then you go, actually, all students don't need tutors if they can use Wize. Wize is like tutoring on steroids, and then you can kind of move in that way. Then you can have links where you can either drive traffic to your own website, wiseprep.com, start today, you can start for free, that kind of language. Or if, say, you're trying to drive subscription to your YouTube channel because maybe your business is cooking, and that the way in is going to be through people watching you cook through your YouTube channel. And so you want to post it there. Or if you've got a blog, even if there's some multimedia images, that's where you put it. So you've got whatever your provocative opening, a question, bold statement, something unexpected, and then a little bit of how you were tying it to your business or yourself. And then that's where you throw in those links. And then you want typically some kind of incentive to drive engagement. So it could be a call to action where you say, like, what do you think? Or, let me know, am I wrong? Do people still need tutors? Or were you a tutor? Or something like that. And then people get an opportunity to weigh in and communicate with you. And we all sort of like that. And especially with this extended pandemic, the idea of being able to create and maintain and be involved in community online is really, really powerful. And then, of course, hashtags, just a way in which you can have your content be searchable by things. LinkedIn itself recommends around 3 hashtags. I'm crazy, and I always put way more than that. And again, some of the recommendations are to be a little bit more niche, so that, say, instead of just like EdTech as a hashtag, that it might be something, I might choose something a little bit more specific, such as, STEM education or higher ed, EdTech, or something like that in my hashtag. Again, you've got a sample LinkedIn post structure for you with a link to like a real live one that I posted, which had, I think it was something like 5,000 people viewed it, 25 people interacted with it. Again, I'm not like a famous person, so that's a lot for me. I'm still in startup land. This is all relatively new to me. This is not my training. This is hard-won experience. And this is simply what I said, let's talk about rank and titles for a bit because they matter, but not as much as you might think, and this again, because I have that transition from being an academic to working in startups, often this idea of how do you find work post-academic life and all of that is something that I talk about a lot in both my Twitter and LinkedIn. And then I went on and talked about that difference in the explanation part. And then my link, my multimedia, like it was literally just a screenshot of a tweet that I posted. So that's again how you can repurpose some of your content from other places again and again, so that you're not recreating YouTube content and Twitter content and blog content and LinkedIn content and website content and email content, that you're able to say, write the elevator pitch once and use it in a bunch of different places. You're able to write a piece of content once and use it again. So again, you've got that template and you can use it. Before we go on to this sort of general schema or general post, any questions about sort of LinkedIn or how you can make that your own? All right, we are on our penultimate template, our penultimate piece of writing that will get your startup noticed. And this is a very general one, but the framework is absolutely excellent. And it's not a framework that I made up. It's one that I got and adapted from other people, but it is really a fantastic one. And this is where, again, Twitter may be a place where you find yourself building content. You might at some point in your startup journey start to create paid ads, either Google ads or Facebook and Instagram ads. You may be asked to communicate in other sorts of ways about your startup business. Now, a very quick way of doing this and sort of creating a number of different pieces of content that have the same structure is to use a problem, consequences, solution framework. And you can replicate this in a variety of different ways. So it doesn't have to be like the big problem that your business solves, but some of the problems. So present your customer's problem, be emotive, hit them where it hurts. So if generally your business helps students to get better grades, I can narrow that down and be like, are you going to fail calculus? So maybe that's the particular problem that I'm identifying there, as opposed to the larger aggregate problem that the business as a whole solves. And then what are the worst consequences of the problem? And I don't mean this to say that you're trying to freak people out, but what happens if you sort of push it? Like, so what happens if you do fail calculus? Like why do we care? Why does that matter? What are the consequences? And partially that's to get your audience thinking about the significance or the severity of whatever the solution that you have will do to make their life better. And then, of course, the final piece is how you explain how your startup solution does solve that pain of the customer's problem. And again, as I say, this can be used in a whole bunch of different ways. I have an example from literally this morning's Instagram post. We have a fourth-year undergrad student who does some of our social media as an intern, and she did a really great job today with one of our posts. And this is literally, she says, "Are you struggling to find the best way to study for your midterms?" So again, that's a particular part of the problem that, say, Wize as a EdTech software platform solves. And then she says, "Are you worried a bad grade now might affect your GPA and competitiveness to get into the program you want?" And then the solution: "Let our expert Wize instructors help you out with exam prep." And then she goes on to explain, here's where you sign up and here's the links and all the rest of it. But the problem, consequences, solution, and she and I didn't tell her I was doing this presentation today or anything. And it just sort of magically happened that was the framework that she ended up using. And again, I wanted to sort of show that here to demonstrate that it is very versatile. So it's something that you can use in a variety of different contexts. Before moving on to blog posts, any questions about this particular kind of more general schema, but one that I think is really versatile in a variety of different ways? All right, let's race to the finish line. So we get to the blog post, and this one was funny. When I started out in startup land, and everybody says, "Oh, you have a blog," and I kind of thought, well, like, who's reading blogs anymore? I mean, we're all busy, but yet every business has a blog, and what happens? And then it took a while for me to then realize and research the way in which search engine crawling and algorithms work, and the role and function that blogs play in making your online presence visible to those search engine crawlers. And so by that, what I mean is Google has a number of different algorithms, and it's constantly looking at everything that is online, and it's making decisions about the everything that is online. And those decisions will then rank where your content appears when people search for your things. And so having a search engine optimized blog post is really helpful in that vein to be able to make sure that your content, as much as it's in your control, is being indexed and searched and crawled by Google, which then makes it visible to the people on the other end. And so again, the sort of ABCs of blog creation from an SEO perspective is that you want to have sort of algorithm optimized keywords. And again, I go back to that number one thing you need to do, which is research. Because I can't tell you what are the best keywords for your business, but it's going to be a combination of keywords that have high search volume, but probably low difficulty. So for instance, with Wize, if I optimized everything we ever wrote for math help, even though there are lots and lots of people the world over who will Google search math help, it would be very, very competitive to be the top ranking search for math help. So again, that's something that I would bear in mind. Whereas if I wanted to look at something more specific, like differential equations, that might be less difficult to rank for and still have a high search volume. So again, you want to make sure that you do that keyword research. Then you also want to make sure that you've got backlinks. So if you can post links to your other blogs and other bits of content that you've created, that's always helpful, because that's another thing that Google is searching for. So how many other sites point to your content goes into that algorithm. And then you want to post consistently. And then this is just a little sort of technical piece in terms of how you want to optimize your blog when it comes to keywords and header tags. And now, again, there's a sort of simple blog structure, and I've broken it down for you. So you want your catchy title, how to do what, 5 tips to do this, top 10 to do that, best recommendation for this. Those often do very well. They're good from a searchable perspective, and they can start to generate evergreen content for your evergreen search results for you. Then you'll want a piece of multimedia content, an image or video with text, so that you've got like top 5 tips to get the best grades ever. And you might have a picture or a video of somebody studying or something like that. Then you want a compelling introductory paragraph. So you want to hook your reader somehow. And you also want to ensure that you have some of those key primary keywords and secondary keywords in that introductory paragraph. And then if you can, you want some kind of table of contents or some kind of list. So if you're going to say, top 5, blah, then you want to list those top. Number 1 is this, number 2 is this, number 3 is this. And then have a short paragraph before you go into the detail of those top 5 things. And then if you can, have them link down. So if your blog allows for it, you can then link down and then explain each of those 5 elements from the context section. So 1, if it's like, hey, make sure to wake up and study first thing in the morning, then you explain why the research suggests that you should study first thing in the morning. And if number 2 is make sure that you're hydrated when you study math, and then you'll want to have a little bit of a paragraph explaining why hydration and math competency are linked and associated, so that you've got some valuable content as you work through those top 5 things that you're listing. If you can, have another piece of multimedia content, another image or video. Again, you get that chance to make it look nice so that people will like and enjoy that content, and then ultimately they as well might backlink to you, and then that helps to drive more and more of that traffic. And then you want a short concluding paragraph, and this is where you may have some of those value adds to your other content. For more suggestions on effectively studying for math, please read, and then you can list 3 of your other blogs that are related to that topic or something like that. But what you want to recall is that this is the last thing that you're giving your reader. So you do want it to be good. You want to sort of tie it up in a nice little bow. And then you've got your call to action. So whatever your business is, if you want them to, put something in their shopping cart, if you want them to subscribe, if you want them to sign up now, whatever it ends up being that is key for your business, you want that to appear at the end of the blog. So that in a run through is the sort of 5 kind of most important aspects of writing that you really want to know and that you really want to master for your startup and to get it noticed. The elevator pitch, the cold email to investors, crafting yourself as a LinkedIn thought leader, a kind of general and reusable ad or social post template, and then how you create optimized blogs and a kind of framework for doing that. Before I go back and sum things up and open it up to total questions, are there any specific questions before we leave this shared Google Doc?
We did have one regarding ads, and this was on whether a social post can actually serve as an ad on social.
Yes, absolutely. That's a really good question. So there are 2 different ways that you can create social ads. So you can actually go into like the back end of Facebook, or now it's Meta, sorry, my bad. The back end of Meta, which owns both Facebook and Instagram, and you can actually like post an ad and a campaign and create an ad set. Or you can create a post and then you can sponsor it. So what that means is you can then put some money behind it and set out some targeting, and then that will appear as a promoted and paid post that you can do. So there are both those ways in which you can do some paid social posting, either formally as an ad through like the ad manager backend, or just like from your phone, you can click on something and be able to promote it and set some targeting around that. Any other ones?
Other questions?
All right. So some final tips before we close things off. One thing that I really can't stress enough in all of this is that sort of being authentic is really key. So if you're funny, be funny. If you're not funny, don't try to be funny. Be honest. I mean, certainly don't, when you're offering that kind of social proof or traction, don't lie about anything to do with your startup. Put your best foot forward, but be as honest as possible. The other part is being consistent. So both like LinkedIn and search engine algorithms, they all prioritize constant and new posting, which is, as I say, why people have blogs. And so if you're posting on YouTube as part of your overall content strategy, if you're posting blogs, if you're posting on social, do so as regularly as possible. And of course, revise and refine. You now have those great templates. I'm sure there are probably typos in there or whatever. You certainly want to tweak your own content as you go along. You might be able to make that elevator pitch even better with time. And then, of course, spell check, grammar check, ProWritingAid is your friend. You want to make sure that things are as professional as possible. And so on that, I am done the formal part. So if there are other questions, I now turn it over to you, Micah. You can drive this ship. And if you are curious, I mean, certainly check out wizeprep.com and see what we're up to at this fantastic edtech startup where I now work.
Like I mentioned in the chat, I wish Wize had been around when I was at university. That elevator pitch really drew me in. All right, I think we have a couple of questions coming in. I think we have one question on receiving a copy of the Google Doc. I am going to go ahead and repost that link, and I believe you should be able to duplicate from there. Correct,
yes,
Lindy?
Yeah. So try doing that right away. Like once you, and when we do the follow-up email, we'll put that link to the Google Doc in there. Like I've set it to be public. It's just not publicly editable. So that's why you do have to then go and make a copy of it so you can play with it on your own.
File, make a copy, and that should be something that you can copy to your drive. If you don't have a Google account or you don't want to log in, you can also download a copy via PDF, Word, any format that you would like to. All right, do we have any other questions? All of these links will also be available in your replay emails, so you will have that. And folks, if you were not able to attend today, you'll also be getting those in your email with the replay. Any other questions? Right. Well, Lindy, I believe you were so thorough. You have covered everything today. So,
All right, I am glad to hear it. We are fantastic. We've still got like 10 minutes, so we are super duper efficient. So I am a-okay, Micah, if we're good to quit nice and early, and we'll wrap this recording up and everybody's got their templates. Unless there are any other questions, I'm good to go.
just one more call for questions, and if we don't have any, we will go ahead and give you guys back an extra 10 minutes to your day. All right, well, I think all of our questions have been covered. Thank you all so much for coming. This has been a great session. Lindy, thank you for hosting. I see everyone raving in the chat about how great this presentation was, so I can't wait for everyone to get the chance to watch the replay and all of that wonderful stuff. So everyone, thank you so much. Oh, one more question, Lindy, on your contact information. Oh, Lindy, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, I muted myself. I said, so on Twitter, I'm Dr. Lindy, which is probably the easiest way to find me. Otherwise, lindy@wizeprep.com by email, but I'm definitely quicker on Twitter.
Okay. So best way is going to be contacting on Twitter @Dr. Lindy. So, all right. Well, I think that covers us for today. Thank you all again for attending, and have a great rest of your day.